All right, hey, what's up, y'all? So I have a talk today that I'm calling A Tale of Three Doctors. And if I can pull this off, I feel like we've got some really good learning points coming out of this. And some of you may have seen a YouTube video that I did not too long ago. I called it A Tale of Two Doctors. And that was really just a test run for me to get some ideas down. And I wanted to share that with some of my medical doctor friends. I have a really good support system here. I've got a cardiologist and some functional medicine doctors and some MDs that I've worked with over the years that fully support what we're doing. And I just wanted to make sure that what I put out had some useful learning points and it was tactful. And so the difference between that and today's video is that this is going to have some really solid learning points that we can take and put into practice. And so if you stick with me to the end, then I guarantee you're going to get some useful stuff out of this. I think this is a necessary discussion. And I do want to put a disclaimer out front, and that is obviously what I'm saying here is not meant to give you recommendations on treatment or non-treatment or drugs or non-drugs. What I'm talking about here today is what I'm very qualified to talk about, and that is nutrition and lifestyle factors as it pertains especially to chronic disease and degenerative disease, because I think we can all acknowledge that that's such a huge component of working with chronic disease and degenerative disease is the nutrition and lifestyle factors, if not the biggest component. And most medical doctors just don't have the training or the expertise in that area. Medical doctors have close to zero nutrition training in med school. And how would I know this? Because I have medical doctors that are friends, I have medical doctors that support what we're doing, and any medical doctor will tell you, like, they just don't have much nutrition training in school, which means that whatever knowledge they have, they had to get outside of med school. And they have access to the same stuff that I have access to. And I went to the military academy at West Point. I went through they didn't have a nutrition course or path, but I took all their nutrition courses, all their fitness courses. And then since then, I've gone through, I don't even know how many freaking nutrition certifications and schoolings, and half of them were completely wrong and preaching food pyramid, USDA, FDA guidelines, and then a lot of them I'm very proud of. And I feel like I have a track record that is very solid, because for the past 10 years, I've been working with people and putting people through group progressions, and we've received a lot of feedback. And so again, I feel like I'm very qualified to talk about this stuff, right? Imagine going to a doctor and going through a real food progression or working with me privately and seeing personal transformation on all levels. And imagine going to a doctor and telling your doctor what you're doing, and that doctor actually applauding your efforts and saying, congratulations on this real food way of eating. And now let's fine tune things a little bit. Let's take some blood work. Let's check your hormones. Let's check your digestive system, and let's see if we can make this even better. And the reality is that's not what happens. What happens in most situations is the doctor has one or multiple pieces of advice that completely conflict with what we're trying to do with real food. And then that adds to the confusion. And then people come back and they have a hard time implementing what it is that we're implementing, because even though experientially they believe in what we're doing, based on that feedback, it just kind of derails them a little bit. So it seems like to me, there's three different types of doctors that you might encounter, all right? We have the first type of doctor, which is a functional medicine doctor, which is a classically trained MD that has gone through the Institute of Functional Medicine or a similar functional medicine schooling, or is very well versed in ancestral health. All right, and this doctor is going to support your nutrition and lifestyle efforts when it comes to real food, including eating animal foods, including red meat and pork, and saturated fats that come from traditional fat sources like butter. All right. This would be the ideal, is if you could find someone like this, all right? And maybe you can do a little research and start to vet your doctors, because I know most functional medicine doctors are actually self-pay, although some are not. All right. The second doctor that you might come across is a doctor who is promoting real food and avoiding things that we recommend avoiding, like gluten and grains and processed food, and encourages eating real food, but is still stuck in that ancient paradigm of red meat being bad and causing cancer and cholesterol problems, and saturated fat causing cholesterol problems and heart disease, the whole lipid hypothesis, right? This is a doctor that you could probably work with. Slightly frustrating, though, that you have this one little nuanced thing that is still very archaic. All right, and then the third type of doctor you might encounter is a doctor that has no understanding of ancestral health whatsoever, doesn't recommend real food in any capacity, doesn't see a value in it, and recommends everything in moderation and preaches the USDA and FDA guidelines as far as nutrition goes, which, by the way, the USDA and FDA are not nutrition, and especially not holistic nutrition organizations, all right? So, first principle, all right, that I think might be very useful is only consider taking health advice from someone that appears to be healthy. I think that's pretty solid advice, right? If someone doesn't seem to be healthy, then you might want to question whether you're taking advice from them. I know everyone has their own personal story and what they're going through. I'm just saying in general, overall, in most situations, if I'm taking personal training advice from someone, I want someone to look the part. If I'm taking nutrition advice from someone, I want someone to look the part. All right, so only consider taking nutrition advice from someone that seems to be healthy or is on the right path, all right? Now, let's talk about the first doctor. First doctor situation. First doctor is someone, we're going in reverse now though. I'm starting with the one that I covered last, right? So the first doctor is recommending whole grains, low fat, or everything in moderation, eating every 2 or 3 hours. And this type of doctor may not even think that nutrition is important at all. In fact, I had a client yesterday that came in, and it was a phone consult from a doctor's office. And the doctor's office asked if we take insurance. And I'm like, no, we don't take insurance. We're considered holistic and alternative, but we do get results, you know. And they gave me this person's number, called this person up, came in for an initial consult. And it was just mind blowing what their doctor recommends them do. And bless their heart, you know, my heart goes out to them. I was sitting there in tears with this couple because, you know, this guy had just come off of chemotherapy, just come off of immune suppressing drugs, has really massive digestive issues, taking Imodium most days, and his doctor recommended him get his gallbladder out, and the reason for it was so that he could eat as much French fries and donuts and fried foods as he wanted to. And it just blows my mind that a medical doctor or professional would recommend doing something like that. And I know this doctor is coming from a place of knowledge, and you know, I got to respect, you know, a lot of the things that I don't understand and know that this doctor knows, but that just really blows my mind, right? So if you have a doctor that you know, thinks this way and it just doesn't seem to have much of an understanding of ancestral health and real food in general, then you can use that doctor for the things that doctor's good at. You know, your x-rays and your exams and your checkups. And you just have to take everything with a grain of salt. Like, you just have to be careful what advice you listen to or follow from that doctor. And if you have anything that comes back abnormal with any of your blood work, then you can actually research that stuff on your own. Reach out to someone like me. I can point you in a direction of some really good qualified medical doctors that can actually help you from a holistic and foundational standpoint, okay? The second type of doctor that you might encounter is the one that we covered in the middle while ago, and that is a doctor that is promoting real food, avoiding grains, and but still is stuck in this archaic mindset around red meat and cholesterol and heart disease. All right, so, and I have several examples here. There's a doctor that a lot of my clients have gone to see, and people that have gone through my progression have gone to see. By the way, all these people have seen tremendous transformations when adopting real food and seen all their different health markers improve. And then they're seeking the advice and help of a medical doctor, which is really useful and beneficial in a lot of situations, because medical doctors can do tests and make recommendations that I can't based on those different tests. Okay, so I respect what we can do from a medical doctor perspective. Right? But the tragedy is that I have people that go see this doctor, and this doctor and the doctor's PA will badmouth what we're doing. And they don't recommend us at all, whereas we usually do recommend this doctor because this doctor has been through my classes, understands real food. And so it just kind of baffles me that I get feedback from some of my clients that come back and they say that this doctor is not a fan of what we do. And so I asked one of my close friends that have been with me since 2014, what is it specifically about what we do that this doctor does not like, that causes this doctor to say that they're not supportive of what we do? And the first thing that my friend said was that we allow caffeine and we promote coffee drinking or allow coffee drinking or something like that. And I'm like thinking to myself, okay, of all the things, like we're recommending people eat real food and become real foodies. If you disagree with caffeine and coffee and tea, that's not a reason to discourage what we're doing and then instill this sense of confusion in the people that we're working with. All right. The other things were the obvious things that I would always expect from a lot of medical doctors, and that is just not that this doctor and PA are not a fan of the red meat and the fat piece of it, and that we recommend all this fat consumption. And I think what I want to say there is just don't throw the bacon out with the bacon grease. Okay, we are a real food methodology. I don't know anywhere that we ever recommend that our people eat a lot of red meat or a lot of fat. We recommend eating the right traditional fats in place of the toxic fats, and we recommend balance in everything that we do. And we advocate and allow red meat, and we advocate and allow pork, and we advocate things like fatty cuts and bone in and skin on, simply because we find that there's more nutritional value there. But again, don't throw the bacon out with the bacon grease, meaning this is a real food methodology. What we should be doing is supporting each other and congratulating our people on their transformations and their attempts at eating real food, and then sitting down with them and saying, now let's try to fine tune things just a little bit, okay? I have another client that have gone to see this doctor in PA and got very discouraged coming back. It broke my heart because, by the way, this client has seen, again, transformation on all levels. Blood pressure has normalized. Fasting glucose and fasting insulin are awesome compared to where they were before. She's lost a lot of body fat. She feels great. She feels very confident in what she's doing with real food. And she went to a visit, and the PA said, we're not fans of the SHT. And so this added some confusion to what she felt was a very confident way of doing things. And so I asked her to sit down and make a list of all the beneficial things that have changed. And next time that you go in to see this doctor, to sit down and just say, hey, look, I've experienced all these great things. What is it about, the SHT that you're not a fan of? And she came back and gave me some great responses. All right. So I think these are really good little talking points. SHT is fine. It's fine to get people off of processed food and sugars and wheat and stuff like that. Yeah, it is a great way to do that. And the SHT, older people have spikes in cholesterol, and therefore they need to be cautious with their meat and fat consumption. Well, I'm going to address cholesterol here in just a moment. This doctor recommends doing a liver cleanse once or twice a year. Great, fine. Like we used to do cleanses, and I have a different thought process around cleanses. I don't see anything wrong with it as long as it's still focused on real food. And then blood work shows some nutritional deficiencies that this doctor is able to work with supplementation. I love that, absolutely love that. I have people bring in blood work all the time, and we recommend supplements based on blood work, and that's great. And the SHT is not a one diet fits all. It's not for everybody. And I have some disagreements with that, and I'm going to talk about that here in just a second. And there's fats that we need from other sources that are not found in animal fats that don't spike cholesterol, and I have a little bit of a disagreement with that, and we're going to talk about it, right? And the reason we're talking about this is because we want to have some learning points that come out of this, right? So let's unpack a few concepts here. The first one is older people have spikes in cholesterol and don't need to be eating so much red meat and fat. And then also, to tag on to that, there's fats that we need from other sources that don't spike cholesterol. So this is just a very old, archaic mindset and way of thinking around fat and cholesterol. And, I have had to study cholesterol for the past 10 years because every time I put someone on real food, everyone questions what they're doing because of what they're eating. And then half the time these people go in for a lipid profile, they come back with higher LDL and higher total cholesterol. And there is so much great information out there on this. And if you just follow some of the thought leaders, and I'm going to name out a few, and I'll list these in the notes and references associated with this video. People like Paul Saladino, which is the forerunner, the leader of the carnivore movement. Chris Kresser, one of my favorite all-time practitioners. Mark Sisson, Chris Masterjohn, a PhD in nutrition, lipid biologist. Like, I have followed his stuff. He had a website called Cholesterol and Health years ago. I think he transitioned over to a different website now. It might be chrismasterjohnphd.com or something like that. But has everything that you could possibly want to know about cholesterol and the body and cholesterol numbers. Peter, I can't remember how to say his name, Dobromilitsky from Hyperlipid. I've also followed him for a really, really long time. Dave Feldman has been on a lot of podcasts. Dr. Kendrick, Ivor Cummins, all these people have a lot of info out there and great websites and 101s, and there's a Lipid Academy that I've been through, which is really awesome. Peter T is another great guy to follow, by the way. And what's really interesting is even within all these people are ancestral health based. And even within these top minds in the ancestral health realm, there is not a consensus on what we need to be looking at as far as cholesterol goes. And I have my thoughts around it because I listen, that's my responsibility now, is to listen to all these hot shots and try to distill down what it is that we need to know. But what they do all agree on is that the priority is eating real food and improving metabolic health. And what is metabolic health? Well, we can measure it through a few different things: blood pressure, body composition, meaning losing body fat and getting to an optimal body weight, and then fasting glucose and or fasting insulin, just to show that you have good blood sugar handling and you're not pre-diabetic or something like that. And if you have those three things going for you and you feel good, which is another great indicator, then to hone in on cholesterol as something that's problematic and you have to revamp what you're doing because of that is not the right way to do things. And I'm gonna share some links here, and if you just self-educate yourself, you might find that it's normal to have a high LDL. It's normal to have a high total cholesterol as you're transitioning or as you're eating a more real food way of eating and animal foods and traditional fats, because maybe LDL is slightly protective, or maybe there's something beneficial about what's happening with that if, in the context of seeing all these other health markers improve, you feel really, really good, okay? So a key principle here, I think, is if all your health markers are improving and you're looking and feeling and performing amazing and you have good metabolic health, better metabolic health, then to hone in on cholesterol as an enemy or a problem and all of a sudden get discouraged about eating animal foods and red meat and traditional fats, it's what do you call it? It's degrading. It's counterproductive. You want to have a healthy conversation with your doctor about this, because there's plenty of resources and references that you can share. And again, I applaud. What I would appreciate is a doctor that's a real foodie that may disagree on a couple little points, is that they support this person's efforts in real food, and then comes back and tries to fine-tune things based on blood work and things like that. And this is specifically what my client said after visiting with the PA. She said, food and nutrition has been so different and with so many different theories over the years. And when I came across the SHT Real Food Way of Eating, I felt so at home, because this is what my grandparents and great-grandparents did, and I felt so amazing from it, and it made a lot of sense, and I have a lot of confidence with real food. And now after visiting with a doctor that says that what I'm doing is wrong, I'm as confused as ever, and it's just very frustrating. And of course I've talked with this client and she's doing amazing and truly believes in what we're doing, but I can understand the difficulty in trying to assimilate all this different conflicting information. Another key principle, I think, is it is better to commit to real food, a real food way of eating that is balanced and that you can sustain for life, than to commit to something that is super restrictive, like eating only chicken and eggs and fish, because it supposedly helps with your cholesterol, or even eliminating coffee. I think it's way more beneficial to commit to something that you can commit to long term, and within that commitment of a real food way of eating, of course, always experimenting and fine tuning and pulling things out and bringing things back in. But I think it's better to commit to a real food way of eating that is encompassing and you can sustain for life, than to commit to a real food way of eating that is too restrictive. Because what happens is people just end up falling off, right? Another thing that came back from this doctor and PA is that people come for help from the SHT, and then with their help they get back on with the SHT, which implies that they're kind of fans of the SHT, but not really fans of the SHT, because that's not what they're saying to clients and people they work with. And I've looked at what they recommend for real food and their way of eating, and I agree with all of it. It's obvious they eliminate red meat and pork except for some tenderloin, and they eliminate butter, but they're okay with ghee and coconut oil. So, I think it's a great way of eating. Again, with a doctor with the right mindset can support someone, because a doctor's mindset tends to have a little bit more validity and a little bit more weight. And if I have a client that goes to see a doctor and the doctor reinforces what they're doing with the real food, then that can be a great thing. But we need to be on the same page and support each other and not break each other down. And the final thing that came up in that conversation with that doctor is that the SHT is not a one-size-fits-all diet. And I think every diet, by definition, is claiming to be a one-size-fits-all for all the people that they work with, including this doctor and PA's recommendations on how to eat. That's a one-size-fits-all for everybody. All right, so any person's way of eating or way of doing things is going to be a one-size-fits-all, but the question is, how flexible is that way of doing things? So a key principle here is that it is clear from our evolutionary past and our anatomy and physiology and our digestive system what it is that we're supposed to eat. All human beings should avoid ultra-processed food and the industrial seed oils, and I would say most people need to avoid wheat, if not everybody. But all human beings need to avoid ultra-processed food, and all human beings need to eat real food, a balance of animal foods, traditional fats, nutrient-dense vegetables, some starchy things, some fruit, things that come from the earth, okay? So in that sense, that applies to all human beings. So it is a one-size-fits-all. The question is, within that general framework, what do we feel best on? And in the SHT, what we do is help people facilitate experiments. And in that sense, we are very proud about what we do. We do not recommend just one way of doing things except for some general principles and guidelines. But within those general principles and guidelines, we understand everyone's very bio-individual. And to figure out what that bio-individuality is and where your dysfunction is, then it's helpful to run some tests, do some symptom analysis, and experiment within that general framework, all right? All right, so the third type of doctor that we might encounter is going to be a functional medicine doctor and or an MD that is very well versed in ancestral health. And this is the cream of the crop, and this is the kind of person that you want to try to find if you can afford it, because they are going to be supporting your efforts in eating real food, including animal foods and red meat and saturated fat and pork and traditional fats like butter, okay? And this doctor will be able to run some tests like a classically trained MD and maybe be able to help you fine-tune some things. When you go see this doctor, like I had a client not too long ago we had dinner with, and she went to a functional doctor, and she came back and she's like, you know what, Paul, everything that you've taught us is completely correct. This doctor looked at your book, she looked at your information, and she said, this is an awesome way of doing things. And now let's see if we can kind of fine-tune things and try to get things, get you on a track and path of being really, really diligent with this stuff. But to her, it felt really good to have a medical doctor confirm and support what it is that we've been doing for so long. And so that's one of my points I want to reiterate, that if you have a medical doctor that is versed in ancestral health and or is a functional medicine doctor, then they can give you leverage to do the things that you already know that you need to do, but because it's a doctor and because you have blood work supporting it, then maybe that's going to help you feel a little bit better and give you more leverage to do what it is that you know you need to do, okay? I think that's everything that I want to say. Just to recap those three different types of doctors, we have the first type of doctor, which is the ultimate, the cream of the crop. This is a classically trained MD that has gone to functional medicine school or is very well versed in ancestral health. This is the kind of doctor that you're ultimately looking for because they are going to support your efforts in real food. They're foundational based, meaning they don't treat symptoms. They work at a foundational level. They work with nutrition, supporting what we do. They work with lifestyle factors. They work with foundational things like systems like digestion. And because they understand those symptoms are there for a reason. The question is not what do we do to treat these symptoms. The question is what is causing or contributing to these symptoms in the first place. And a lot of times, if not almost all times, that has to do with nutrition and lifestyle factors. All right, the second doctor that you might come across is that middle of the road doctor that is kind of a real foodie because they're recommending eating real food and not eating processed food. And we love this type of doctor, except for the fact sometimes this doctor is going to scare clients and patients because of cholesterol and red meat and saturated fat, which is an archaic way of thinking. If you have a doctor like this and you would like to have a healthy conversation with them, then I can give you plenty of references and resources, and I can give you other doctors that you can put this doctor in contact with to have a conversation to get them up to speed on this very nuanced little topic here. Because what you don't want is to go see someone like this and feel like you're doing things wrong because you're eating real food, including red meat and butter, and then that discourage you from adopting this real food way of eating. We want something that's supportive of what you're doing, all right? And then the third type of doctor you might encounter is going to be that medical doctor that is just, USDA, FDA guidelines, doesn't really consider real food a very powerful ally and recommends everything in moderation. And, you just got to take that doctor for what it's worth. They have their area of expertise with exams and tests and blood work. And then you can take that that information and maybe cross-reference it with someone who knows a little bit more about holistic health and ancestral health, all right? So big takeaways from this entire little talk here. First principle is always consider taking health advice from someone that appears to be healthy, all right? I think that's really good wisdom there, all right? Another key principle is if all your health markers are improving and moving in a good direction, especially your metabolic health markers like blood pressure and body composition and fasting glucose and fasting insulin, then don't get derailed about having a high cholesterol. I'm not saying that it's not a problem. It's like a check engine light, and it's something that you can inquire more about. And to do that, I would recommend finding someone that's a little bit more versed in the current thinking around cholesterol and heart disease, all right? Another key principle is it is better to commit to a real food way of eating that is broad and encompassing and sustainable for life than it is to try to commit to a very restrictive real food way of eating. All right. Another key principle, an MD with the right mindset that is on board with ancestral health and functional medicine and that supports a real food way of eating, including animal foods, can give you just the leverage that you need to do the right thing, because you can go in to see one of these doctors and they can tell you, you are doing a great job, and now let's try to make things just a little bit better with the information we can learn from these tests that I can do, all right? Another key principle is, remember, we have an evolutionary past and an anatomy and physiology and a digestive system that clearly indicates what it is that we're supposed to eat. And in this sense, this is a one diet fits all. We should all not be eating ultra processed food, and we should all be consuming real food, including animal foods and traditional fats. All right, I think most doctors have good intentions. They're here for the same reason that we're here. They want to help people. They want to give people results. I think keeping that in the back of our minds, everybody's working from a perspective of doing the best they can with what they have. And MDs, don't have that much nutrition training in med school. It doesn't mean that the MD that you're working with doesn't know a lot, because they can school themselves with a lot of resources outside of med school like we have. And that's the kind of doctor that you want to find, all right? Your focus needs to be eating 100% real food, a balance of real foods, training the body how to be metabolically flexible, because that is going to contribute to metabolic health, okay? Thank you for sticking around with me for that long rant, and I hope that's useful. Please give me some feedback on that, all right? It took a lot of guts to get out here and say this stuff, and I just want it to be useful, but I have so many people that go out and visit with doctors and have mixed experiences, and I just want people to see results, okay? Thank you so much for listening.